Hey, welcome back everyone to another devlog video. So last week I was talking about adding lines to the game. I'm gonna talk about that later, since it's kind of boring editor stuff again and you guys seen enough of that stuff already. So to change things up, I did some more arts. Whenever I'm bored of programming, I try to do some art to give myself some rest. So I've been prototyping a city type of stage. Since we're making a parkour kind of game, I really want to add a city in there. The game is set into the future, so it's gonna be kind of a futuristic city. And since I love Tokyo, I want to take some inspiration from Tokyo. So here you can see what I made so far. It's kind of a vibrant city. In Tokyo you usually see many vibrant buildings. You see a lot of white buildings, but also a lot of vibrant buildings. I'll try to add some pictures or video here so you can get an idea. You can see I've added some characters in there, some placeholder characters, just to get a sense of the scale. So one problem with this vibrant city right off the bat is you can see that these things all kind of blend together. There's this tile, yellow tile that you can jump on, and a red tile which you can jump on. That's in the foreground, that's what the character can interact with. But the green building in the background kind of makes them all blend together, the foreground and the background. It's kind of hard to distinguish what's the foreground and what's the background. Especially in a platformer where you move at a fast pace and you're running through the stage and you have to very quickly assess what you can interact with and what you can't interact with. So even though I really like the colors, it makes it hard to distinguish the foreground and the background, and it will hinder the gameplay. So even though it's cozy, I have to think, is this a smart idea for colors? So I also made a version that has colors that are less saturated, less vibrant. So you can see this building used to be purple, now it's white. And immediately you can tell it's way less cozy, it's more clinical. But since we're in a futuristic setting, I think it might work. So when you look at the yellow tile and the red tiles in the building, you can see immediately it's way easier to distinguish what you can interact with and what you can't interact with. Now the building top here is still a dark color, and that is because you can actually interact with it. You can jump on this, it's like a one-way platform. So that takes me to the theme of the city stage. Every world in the stage will have its own theme. So far you've seen like the grassland type of world with the grassy hills in the background and the grassy tiles which you walk on. That's kind of the introductory world to the game. It will just introduce you to all the mechanics of the game, and it will be a lot more simple. It won't have any strange gimmicks or features. It will just be easy to smooth the player into the game. But the worlds after that will all have their own mechanics, their own feature that sets it apart. So when you look at Mario 3, for example, you can see each world also has their own theme. There's the first world, which is also kind of an introductory stage. The first stage is just a normal stage, and then there's the second stage that introduces the slopes. And then if you go to the other worlds, there's like a giant world, and there's like the lava world, and there's the water world. They all have their own mechanics. And that's also what I'm planning with this game. So what I'm planning with the city stage is that it's gonna be all about multi-level platforming. So you can see the floor over here, and you might run along this floor, and then there's this obstacle you have to jump over, and then there's this part where you can jump from the yellow to the red tile. But you might also decide to jump on this vending machine, for example, and then onto the post here. Or maybe you can jump up all these balconies, and then you can actually play the stage from the top of the roofs. So you can jump from this roof to this roof. So you kind of give the player a decision. Do you want to run along the floor, and do you want to run along the tops? And that way it makes replaying the stage a lot more fun as well. There might be objectives that are only on the floor, there might be objectives only at the rooftops, and it gives you a bit more creative freedom how you want to traverse the stage. So to go back to the color scheme, I think this color scheme is a lot better, even if it's less cozy. It makes it easier to distinguish the foreground and the background. But I also made some other versions of this stage. I made a lot of different versions. So this is a bit more colorful, but still not as vibrant as the first one. So you can see there's still some yellow, and it makes it still a bit more cozy than the really clinical white one. And I also made a ton of other versions since I just couldn't make up my mind. So this is kind of a less vibrant version of the first version I showed you. So this is the first one I showed you guys, and if you switch between this one, the white one, and the vibrant one is really almost burning your eyes out. So let me know which version you guys prefer. I think I prefer this white version for now, just because it makes the gameplay more obvious. When you're running around really quickly, it's more obvious what you can interact with. But this other version that has a tiny bit more color might also be good. I might still experiment with adding a tiny bit more color. Maybe I can add more props like the vending machine that will reduce the clinical look a tiny bit more. I still think this one is really cozy, but for a fast-paced game it just all blends together a bit too much. Maybe for more of a simulation type of game it would be nice, but not for this game. So as I mentioned earlier, I was planning on adding the lines to the game, but my editor was just missing a lot of essential features that I had to add first. So if we go into the editor, there's the game manager object here, and there's a field called lines. So that's an array of all the lines in the stage. An array is just a list of things. And my editor didn't support lists. I totally forgot about that, so I had to add that, and it was a lot more complicated than I thought, since there might be lists inside of lists, there might be objects in the list, and that object might have another list, and the editor was not rendering that correctly, and it was just a lot of work. So you can now add, with the add button, an object. It's called a line. So a line has a bunch of properties, like a title, and it might have line elements. So this box might be a line element, and this yellow thing might be a line element, and then you can add it here. And this is another thing that wasn't present in the editor yet. You could add components, but you couldn't add any other type of object, so I had to create that as well. So you can add a line tile element, for example, and that is object 0, and you can define the tiles in this line element. So all these tiles here might be part of the line element, and then you can say here the line actions, maybe land or flip. So that field kind of means what do I need to do on this object to complete the line. So this one might just be any, you can just jump on it, but then you can add another line element here, line tile element, and then you can define this part of the line, and then you can maybe say you need to do a vault on this object. So if we then quickly look at the line, there's this line, there's object 0, that might be this one. There's object 1, that might be this object, and then you can say you have to jump on this one, you need to vault on this one, and then the line is complete. Now this editor, of course, is not the best way to edit the lines into the game. It's just not the most natural way to add lines. So I want to just be able to select all these tiles in the editor like this maybe, and then just right click it and say start a line here, and then maybe right click this section here and say make this a line element, and then choose all the properties and say that you need to vault on this. Then select this part and say this is the end of the line, you need to land on this. Then you have to find a line that says start from here, vault on this, land on this, and that's a line. And maybe automatically it will add like the flag to all the objects, so you don't have to place them manually. So that's kind of what I'm planning to add to the editor later. Now that all the array stuff and all the editor stuff is there, I can start working on that. Even though I'm not gonna use the actual editor to define the lines, I still want to be able to peek into the data that defines the lines, and maybe there are some edge cases where I have to manually edit it, and that will be really useful. So that's pretty much it for this week. I didn't get to adding the actual lines to the game, unfortunately, but I did get to do art stuff, and that was a lot of fun, and it's nice to see a different environment since we've been looking at this environment a long time already. I think it will take some time before I can actually add the city to the game, since the city stage is gonna be probably one of the longest ones to make art-wise, since there's gonna be lots of little ornaments like the vending machines and signs everywhere, and it's just gonna take a lot of time. So next week I can hopefully finally start adding lines into the game and get some actual goals into the game and make the game more than just a sandbox. So thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know which stage you guys prefer in the comments, and I'll see you guys again next week.